Hello. 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 I think I'm on. I'm showing you the view outside the window here at my hotel in Indio, California. This is my plant. His name is Philosopher. And you can see out there, um, the area around here. I'm not showing my own face because, frankly, I'm very sick. I've been in a lot of pain for a lot of days now from the bioweapons. When the Arizona State Troopers kidnapped me and locked me in a jail, the second jail, the one that they transferred me to, I was there for hours. And I think that they did something to me to infect me while I was there. Because within months of leaving that hospital, that jail hospital, wow, that jailhouse, I started to look pregnant and to feel discomfort in my stomach and pressure in my stomach. And then I could almost detect a second heartbeat or circulatory system in my body, it seemed. And now the pain has grown. It grows and it decreases. I almost thought it was an interdimensional type parasite. It came with a certain mind control script that made me think that it was going to be all right, to not alarm me, to make me think that the reason why my stomach was growing and I was experiencing these movements and pain was because I was carrying genetic material of the future to keep humanity alive on another planet when Nibiru came and the war came and I would be taken away from here. That was the script that I was given. Elon Musk was a big character in the script. Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, all these people were characters in the script that they, I don't know, delivered to me as a possibility of what was happening. And by then, I had been turned away from medical care at Scottsdale hospitals and I think it was the Honor Health System, but they have another big system there where they have tons of hospitals that don't seem to have many patients there, that they seem to be more like warehouses or excuses for shipping radioactivity, materials, uranium, things like that. I also saw hospitals, huge hospital buildings underutilized in Houston, Texas. Quite a few. In fact, when the Metropolitan City Police, I think it's called Metropolitan City, Memorial City. Yeah, when the Memorial City Police attacked me and tackled me and handcuffed me and detained me in their vehicle when I was in Houston, it was because I was right across the street from one of those hospitals. And that's when I got the chance to observe that, gee, this is really strange because there are not a lot of patients there. There's a lot of traffic interference. There's a boulevard, a big concrete boulevard dividing each side of the street to make maneuverability challenging. You couldn't just get in and drive across the street to head one way. You had to go the way that the hospital was on. And I noticed all these signs, the way the roads were used, the way the traffic was used, the way the buildings were placed. I noticed all these things. And in the mall across the street, I was going to go to the American Girl store because I like American Girl dolls. But I never got there from the parking lot of Target because the security guards came and demanded I leave and followed me around the mall everywhere I parked. They followed me and they demanded that I leave the public parking lot there. And I had to throw away a baggie of dog poo from walking my dog. And when I got out of my vehicle on my way out to leave because they were intimidating me and telling me I couldn't be in the public space. Well, when I went to throw away the dog poo, they sent two big men, one black and one white, to tackle me to the ground. Now, I think I was 65. So I wasn't a young girl, and I was a girl. I mean, I'm a woman, and they tackled me to the ground because they didn't want me there, because I was noticing an air traffic control window across from the hospital near the American Girl store. And I was noticing the hospital was extremely tall and looked more like a storage and processing center than a hospital. And I noticed the traffic patterns in the boulevards, all these things I noticed. And they wanted to get me out of there because they knew what I had documented on film in Arizona, all the ways that enemies of Americans were taking over the land and using roads and underground canals and DOT conspiracies, zoning laws. The Europeans were working very hard to control the water in Arizona, and I was documenting that. They were building one golf course after another to train the water to move. Lake Mead was constantly falling, but the golf courses in Arizona were constantly growing. And then when they were doing some road work on Highway 8 or 10, probably Highway 10, on the road from Phoenix to San Diego, that I used to drive once a month. When I was driving that, they detoured the road and I was able to pass by a lot of farmland being treated with automated machines. They had big automated matrix machines, that would make a matrix of fertilizer, water on miles and miles and miles of crops. And where they used to have a school bus, couple of school buses with outhouses attached, come in there from probably Nogales, maybe not Nogales, but one of the border towns, just past El Centro, just south of El Centro. There used to be school buses full of workers that they would be illegally transporting across the line, or they probably made it legal, because when you can do whatever you want with the law, and the law has nothing to do with morality or protecting the Americans' property, then you can do whatever you want. So it could have been lawful. I mean, in our country, law is meaningless. Law means acts of war, permitted and communicated acts of war, legitimized acts of war. So one of the things that we found there was an aqueduct, a trans-American aqueduct. And that was when we realized that the Europeans were making big moves to control water, because water is life, right? They're making big moves to control the land of America. They're making big moves to block off areas filled with natural resources in America. And they're making big moves to control where water goes and comes from in America. Because if you control the land and the water, and we already have someone, Elon Musk, controlling the airspace with his satellite system, if you've got control of all of that, then you pretty much have your slave population completely locked down, totally locked down. I mean, what can you do if you can't get water, right? Well, all of these things I was documenting in Arizona. And my reward was being captured by the Arizona state troopers, being driven in a custom-made torture vehicle along a serpentine mountain road until my back broke and is permanently damaged. Well, maybe not permanently. There are miracles, there are cures, there's time. But I still have trouble walking sometimes. I still walk with a limp. I still have to treat it on a daily basis with heat or red light therapy and red light therapy. So, my reward for uncovering the ways that the enemies of America were controlling and taking over our land bit by bit was to be treated like a prisoner of war in an open air concentration camp. But that wasn't enough for them, right? My team got me out of there. I was able to escape Arizona with a credit score that had dropped by over 100 points from mid 700s to mid 600s, too low. And I had an eviction on my record from an unfair housing act against me that I was hoping someone would listen to. But what I learned in Arizona that I'd only suspected before was that the police can do whatever they want to, and that public safety will back them up, and 911 will back them up, and the courts will back them up. And the police are the military arm against civilians in America. That's what I learned. And I learned that you could go to the Superior Court of Arizona, where you would expect the highest standard of justice, and you could have a case based on nothing, based on fabricated charges that look silly on the page. Fleeing the police from what? They created they sent to me 3 different police reports because as my social media information became more popular and known, they realized what a corner they were in. But they made one charge, fleeing the police from nothing, not from any charges, not from any wrongdoing, but fleeing the police to evade capture, right? Essentially. But to tell you the truth, I wasn't sure that they were after me. I suspected they were after me, but I was on the phone with 911 trying to find out for sure. And once it was confirmed that they wanted me, I stopped my vehicle as soon as I could. And all that would be on the 911 tapes. All that conversation would. But it doesn't matter if you're not going to get a fair day in court because Tina Ainley was the 3rd judge put on the case. First, Catherine Kelly was put on the case. And she, I suppose, arraigned me. I don't know. I don't understand what happened. But they took me from the jail cell that they put me in, where they poisoned me, obviously, because why am I having these horrible problems now that are making me feel so sick that I can't even get myself together to tidy up my room and get my shower and put on some nice clothes because I feel so sick and so very, very weak from this bioweapon that's been activated. It's been reactivated in my belly, and it wakes me up at night. It moves around. It causes me pain. It used to have tendrils extending into my heart, but the treatments that I'm taking now have removed that. And I think that the increased pain now is from the dying of the creature, whatever they put inside my body. You know, and I feel very confident. I mean, I got the creatures out of my ears that they put in my ears, and the ones that were in my teeth and jaw, they seem to be incredibly weak now. Of course, I had to have the teeth pulled when before I was attacked, there was nothing wrong with them. Nothing at all. But it's a part of these bioweapons. And I was listening to Fleur Brown, and she had a wonderful guest, and they're dishing the truth, and you can tell the truth from a lie because a truth makes sense. A truth relaxes you when something's been confusing and you couldn't understand. When you hear the truth, you feel comfort and relaxed. On some level, you know the difference between the lies and the truth. On some level, you know the difference and you respond to it. I'm trying to get the highway over there so you can see the bright glaring lights that they use, because those bright glaring lights are a part of the war machine. Those bright glaring lights, those are the lights that used to burn my contact lenses in Houston. Those are the lights that hurt my eyes, that affect my night driving. Those are the lights that the drivers change the intensity of those lights very often and make it so they almost seem to be doing a scan of you in your car, or even when you're walking. You'll be walking and suddenly you'll feel these lights. You'll see lights out of the corner of your eye. You'll see lights flashing, and then you'll see one of those vehicles come up from you behind or in front, and they'll have those bright, glaring, weaponized headlights. They'll have them shining in your eyes. Well, I'm trying to get the computer to show the highway, because really I am just too sick to show my face here. I feel really, really terrible. The lump in my stomach is causing me pain. Sometimes it'll jab me. And I'm pretty sure it's because it's dying. I remember when the creature they put in my ear started dying, and how it wanted to get revenge and stabbed me in the ear in a very deliberate way that actually let me see the joystick operator. All of this sounds outlandish, but let me talk a moment again about Fleur Brune and her broadcast yesterday and her guest. And one of the things that they divulged was how many biological weapons were made right there in Arizona, and how Anthony Fauci, the COVID chief, helped to create AIDS, helped to weaponize AIDS, and how deliberately AIDS was used as a way to decrease the human population and cause people they don't like, non-Europeans and Europeans, a great deal of well, that resonated with me. I said, "Oh, so Arizona is a center like the Ukraine. No wonder I have this exotic dis-ease, this exotic infection. No wonder," I said to myself. But it didn't stop me from suffering again today. And okay, let's talk about like why. Why have the attacks on me accelerated? Well, I found out stuff here where I'm living. I found out stuff that I've seen before, and stuff that once known could compromise the advances of the enemy. Okay, I went driving around last Sunday because I saw a place on the map where there's a big reservoir of water with just a few homes all around it. And I wanted to know what's up with that, and I wanted to confirm that Europeans were the residents there. That although this area of the country has more Mexicans, because it used to be Mexico, has more Mexicans than any other race, Europeans have managed to establish a 25% stake in the population, and the Black Indians have decreased their holdings to less than 3%. Less than 3% Black Americans in this prosperous, beautiful area. Isn't that surprising? Well, not when you know that genocide is the intent and genocide has been successful. And here, Blacks don't only have Europeans out to get them, but the Mexicans don't want them here either. The Mexicans can be very hostile. I know whenever I go to Vallarta grocery store over there, a Mexican grocery store, they make an announcement on the PA to announce that I'm there. And their salesman will follow me, and their servants behind the glass, their clerks that serve the food, they'll be very disrespectful to me very often. But the most interesting thing that happened to me there was that I bought the prepared foods. And one day the manager came out to argue with me to tell me that the prepared foods were not being sold at the right price. And they doubled the prices on all the foods. Doubled the prices. doubled them. And I thought that was really interesting. I mean, I looked at tea, and tea was like $2.99. Next time I come back to that store, tea's gone up $1.50. So I noticed that if I looked at something, the next time I come in, the price of that would go up. But never as astounding as when the manager came out to fight with me about the way they priced the products, to tell me that I wasn't supposed to get what I got, and then doubled the price. And now the price is doubled. So maybe they were going to change the prices anyway. Maybe it was a mistake that had existed that only came to light because they were watching me so closely. But it's obvious that the Mexicans here do not want anybody here but the Mexicans, but they're losing. They're losing everything. They're building everything. They're the laborers. They're the ones driving the trucks. They're the ones working in the desert. And they're getting paid pretty good, but they're not getting paid enough to live in the exclusive neighborhoods that the Europeans have built right up along the mountains where the resources are being mined. And that's what I found out. I'll go into more detail after I talk about courage. Okay, because, well, I'll just finish it. I went driving, and I drove up to this community, and I found it was gated. I found you couldn't get into where the water was and the houses with the water. But when I turned around to leave, a small truck came speeding out of there and expelled a lot of foul air on me. And I thought, oh no, they're gassing me here. They were trying to gas me in Arizona with car exhausts. I even saw one of the vehicles set up with a special exhaust inside under the hood for switching to poison gas from clean gas. No, that wasn't in Arizona that I documented that. That was in Houston, Texas. I documented that because they would drive by the horrible concentration camp, the FEMA camp, run by Sergeant Donna Marie Joubert and Marcus and Deidre Smith of Houston, Texas, of the U.S. Army, working for the Army, black people working for the U.S. Army, and Sergeant Joubert was running that concentration camp. When I asked her, was she a policeman, she said no, she is a bounty hunter. And she also admitted to me that she had been watching me before she was activated, that I lived there for 2.5 years. And the year she became activated after going to training a few times out Las Vegas way. And until she became activated, she denied that she was the police. And I didn't think to ask, are you military? I didn't think to ask that. But she would act like a military guard. She would act very officious. She would act very much like she had power over my life. And I thought it was just because she was the manager of the hotel. And hotel managers do have a lot of power and control over your experience. So I thought she was just being officious for that reason. And when I asked her, are you a policeman? She said, no, I'm a bounty hunter. My husband and I are bounty hunters. So I kind of thought a little bit. I got a little paranoid, but you try to pass it off, because if I took every threat seriously, I couldn't function. If it's not an active threat, it's not a threat I need to worry about, right? So I'm there in this environment, feeling like a prisoner. While I'm there, Geico Insurance Company is committing fraud. They're not honoring my claim that my car had been stolen by Arrowhead Honda car dealership during an oil change in September of 2021. Because in the European military network, which includes all of them in segregated communities, on the golf courses, that's where they get their orders. That's how enemies would pop up everywhere I went to intimidate me, demand I leave, because they tracked me so much. And if you don't believe that, well, I have a person I have a person and I have a document. Probably not anymore. My document cache has pretty much been raided, but a European admitted to me that his bosses had him following people all around Arizona. That when a religious dignitary from Indonesia came and was celebrating with the Navajo and other Indians, he was surprised that they all knew the same dances and the same songs, because until then he wasn't sure that all of the Asian architecture in ruins through Utah and Arizona had anything to do with settlements of those people there. He wasn't sure until he saw the cultural similarities between people thousands of miles away, separated by oceans and seas, conduct the very same cultural traditions seamlessly. And this guy, European man, he admitted that his bosses, his superiors in his military force, had given him and another guy the job of driving around following these people and reporting on where they went and what they did. So if you think that there wasn't a network actively engaged in following me, tracking me, harassing me, setting me up, you would be seriously mistaken. And if it had not happened to me, I wouldn't have believed it. And if it had not been verified by a participant, I wouldn't be able to prove it to you right now. That's the proof. So when he comes out of this enclave filled with water and homes built around water in the middle of the desert, where the Mexican landowners can't afford grass or trees for paying for the water, they're on dirt or very, water hungry elements. But these Europeans, they have access to all this water. Well, on my way to this little enclave, I passed by a huge concrete canal filled with water, filled with lovely, beautiful water. And it's a perimeter around the mountainside there. And if you look way over, you'll see a building with the word granite on the roof so it can be seen from the air. And granite is always around water. Granite is a type of rock that needs water to be formed. So that building probably has something to do with controlling the water, with the administration of water control. So there I am, learning something I'm not supposed to know again, right? I just wanted to see if any black or brown people came out of this lovely enclave. But when I got there and I found that you couldn't even get in without going through the gate, I was totally surprised. So, guess what happened then? That's right, one surveillance car after another passing by. At one point, at least 5 vehicles came by and didn't even try to go in. They just made a U-turn to look at my car where I was parked there in the sunshine by the canal of stolen water. In fact, that canal of stolen water reminded me very much of watching water from Tempe and Mesa, Arizona. I watched water flow right past the Indian reservations and the Indian homes. Let me call these Indians Americans. So the brown Americans had communities, and right past their homes would be this open concrete sluiceway, canal, and water would be rushing right by them on its way to the golf course, where they'd be sprinkling and watering and have lots of water features. And oh my God, in Peoria, the town hall was completely involved with seizing water. They practically had a moat built around them of stolen water. But the Americans weren't getting access to this water, much like the South Africans in South Africa. Maybe that's where the Europeans perfected this particular act of war of controlling the water, of locking up the water, of making all traces of water be gone. Because I watched the big earth moving machines that Americans can't get access to. I watched them drain a pond of water from the Pima Indian Reservation. And the Indians told me, well, I think it was Jews that told me that you can look on one side of the street and see landscaping and homes, low income homes. And across the street, you see the desert. Because when the deal was made that the Americans had to surrender that land to the Europeans had already taken control of the water and made sure they had plenty, but the Americans had none, right? And if you go to the casino, is it called Talking Stick? If you go to the casino there in Arizona on the Pima Reservation and you look at the picture of the management there, you'll see nothing but Europeans. The Europeans like to say, well, the Indians, they have access to the casinos and you never win at the casino. So, they've got plenty of money. And you try to tell them, no. All that money being taken from gamblers is not being won by Americans at all. It's going to the Europeans because you can't open a casino unless Europeans are involved. At Foxwoods, we saw the same thing. At Morongo, here in the desert, here in Coachella Valley Desert, same thing. You look at the management and the executives, the people getting the big bucks, and they're Europeans in the Indian casino. So that's all a fraud. That's a fraud. That's not about reparations, restoration of economic sovereignty. That's not about that at all. Okay, so here I am on a stakeout to see what ethnicity of people are going into the best housing in this area, right? The most luxurious housing in Indio, California, in the Coachella Valley, is over by the mountains, by the foothills, southeast Indio. And I'm looking at one European after another. And of course, suddenly there's a great deal of traffic in this little bucolic, tiny area because they all want to see who I am. So that's why the attacks against me have begun again. I mean, when I parked my car in the parking lot here, people shuffled my trunk 2 days in a row. They don't take anything. They just go in your trunk and throw everything around so you know your car was searched. And that happened twice. And then I'm on my morning walk, used to be quiet all this time, and Europeans are coming by saying hi to me. Europeans coming by saying hi to me. So I know they put me on their surveillance to intimidate me so that I won't talk. Because here's the ripper, people. Here's the ripper. Here's the ripper. Before you even get to this enclave where there's a huge man-made lake of water and homes built around the water, before you even get there, you pass by at least a mile of gated communities on every single street. You drive down the street, you look to the left, there's a gated community. You look to the right, there's a community. You go to the next intersection, gated community to the left, gated community to the right. Next intersection, gated community to the left, gated community to the right. Next intersection, gated community to the left, gated community to the right. It was at least a mile of protected area, protected property. So then I try to go to the hiking trail, right? One gated community after another on the way to the hiking trail. One gated, blocked off community after another requiring identification and key cards for access after another. So that land is pretty much taken over and controlled because not everybody can walk there. Now, here's the saddest thing about it is that walking is my favorite form of exercise. And if we've got enemies of America coming here, blocking off all the land, fencing off all the land, creating a matrix, which is just a design, right, of blocked off privatized property, then we can't even walk, right? But when you do walk, you're walking along a trail that's filled with surveillance. You're not walking anonymously. You can't duck here and there. You've got to take the only avenue available to you, where all the spies are, where all the surveillance are, where all the ones who want to know who you are and what you're doing there are. So then I went by World Mark Indio, which is a resort hotel. So much green grass, so much landscaping. They're building tons of expensive housing there, tons of expensive housing there. But the people that are from Indio, like the people from Houston, can't afford all this expensive property. And what I learned in Arizona is they don't care if the property's not occupied. They just want to settle it. They just want to build on it. And they'll put one or two families in there to watch it. And if you drive into these ghost towns, those one or two families will have a cause to come outside. They'll suddenly need to go outside to do something because they want to get surveillance on you. Oh, I documented so much of this in Arizona. So much of it is on Twitter. If you can find my Twitter account, if it hasn't been taken down. But the only thing I could do was store it on Twitter or Facebook because my cloud has been invaded. My social media is the only way that I can keep data. The only way. I can't keep data on my devices, not safely. I got hackers because law enforcement has been given the privilege of hacking into everybody's system. That's why when I was doing documentation of my kidnapping, I was lucky I had two machines with me, one that could not be invaded and one they could invade. So I only had to worry about managing battery power on one of the machines. But you could see the entire kidnapping right there online, and that's why they had to keep changing the charges against me. That's why they couldn't lock me up. But Arrowhead Honda was on the inside track. I'd had other evidences of it, but they really worked hard to destroy my credit. And they wouldn't fix my 2015 Honda car and wanted me to participate in a fraud with Enterprise Car Rental, and I refused. So they pretty much hated me independently. And when I tried to report the car theft to the Peoria police, he made fun of me and asked me questions. How do you know? I said, well, because I know my car and the seat was different and it looks old and dusty and the tires are threadbare. And this car wasn't even a year old. It was just a year old. And they would not take a police report at Peoria Police Department. And when I went to Peoria Police Department, I saw why. They are definitely a part of the invaders. Definitely. And that's why. So here I am in Indio, California, in the Coachella Valley, trying to make a new start. And what do I find? I find the same old S. The SOS is what I find here. I find that the Europeans have taken over the land. They built gated communities, fenced them off, blocked off access to the land, blocked off access to the resources, and the trail where I actually did see American people, it's all wrecked up. The pavement is all wrecked up. It's fenced. There's a tiny fence opening for the entrance that you can get in, and the rest of the land all around it has been taken and settled, and they are using plenty of water. So I call this courage because when I reported on this in Arizona, I faced a lot of surveillance that ended in being kidnapped, that ended in having my back broken, that ended in me getting some kind of abdominal parasite bioweapon that I can't get rid of yet. And I think it's hurting more, not only because it's being activated, but because the treatments I'm using are killing it. I think this is its last day of rage, but I'm not sure, but it's hurting me so much I can't even show my face. And something's hurting my little doggy too, but we'll worry about that later because I have another report for you tonight. So I'll be coming back. But I call this courage because it takes a lot of courage for me to give you that report. They they searched my car and let me know. They're following me around and letting me know. So I'm already being threatened. And I don't want to be kidnapped by the police again. I don't want my back to be broken. I don't want to end up in a California crooked court. I don't want these things to happen. I mean, the Mizell Center is a public Riverside County facility that has been taken over by Jews and immigrant Jews who are openly hostile towards real Americans getting a free lunch there. And they had a black man, Caribbean homosexual, attack me because it's always better when you're attacked by someone from your own clan. They learned that in the concentration camps in Germany, that the best Nazis were fellow Jews who were trying to get privileges and better survival for themselves by persecuting the others. And the overseers during slavery on the few plantations that existed, the overseers were your own people working against you. So that's what they did at the Mizell Center, right? Well, there are not enough black people in Indio, but I've got some stories about what black people there are here. And I'm going to talk about that next when I talk about infiltrating black community systems and how you can't, if you can't see your enemy, you can't fight your enemy. If your enemy is constantly convincing you he doesn't exist, then you're not watching when they're stealing your land. At the end of the day, war is all about control of resources, control of natural, artificial, and human resources. If you control the resources, you're the master of the land. But if you're doing it sneaky, if you're building gated communities and then you're publishing articles that say the average price of a home in Indio is $325,000, it's because you built $325 homes for Europeans that you're hoping to import from Europe. I used to wonder, why does Simon Parks and all those other British people on Before It's News talk about American politics as if we are their invention, as if we are their property, as if they have a stake in it? And that's why, darlings. That's why, darlings, because they do have a stake, because these expensive homes are being built for them, so that they can claim 25% of the population in a Mexican town where valuable resources have been found, where the people of Indio, the generations of people of Indio, should be the ones to benefit. But instead, the Europeans are going to send more Europeans in to be the bosses. And the people building all this, well, they're going to be retiring. And all this big money they're getting today, the Mexicans, the Indians, it's going to be gone. And they're going to be in a different kind of trap. But guess where the Europeans will be? They'll be locked behind their brick walls. They'll be locked behind their private access fences, and they'll be locked flush up against the source of the resources and the places where the water went. Thank you for joining me. This is Silver Rain Runningcloud. And this report is for the benefit of the good ETs to increase the intelligence, because we Americans are already captured and stuck. We cannot protect ourselves. Our enemies are organized. We are not. We are totally infiltrated. And our only hope is in the good ETs. And we can only hope that they can hear me give this intelligence. Now, one more thing before I end is that on Fleur Brune's conversation with her guest Rob mentioned that the ETs eat people, so don't go on the ships. Well, that's the bad ETs. The human meat, I talked a lot already in the past. I might have those videos on private because I was trying to make a new start and not, sound like the crazy woman. But my new start's not going to work out because I made the mistake of driving around and seeing what the enemy is up to and seeing the lands that they have taken over and controlled. And now I've reported it to you. My church prayed for me yesterday that I would have courage to do what God wants me to do next, although I know that there are consequences and I don't want to face those consequences. You see, I don't want my stomach to hurt more than it's hurting right now. I don't want to feel any more pain than I'm feeling right now. I just don't want to. And I think that's why people like Courtney Brown of Farsight Institute say that if we don't have disclosure now, in the next couple of years, we won't have a chance. Because people like me are tired of taking the risk and taking the punishment. And it took a lot for me to convince myself that I had to make this report. Thank you for joining me. Commander Runningcloud, over and out.